Creative community kind folks out there, thank you for joining me. I'm DBJ, your host. This is the channel RPG with DBJ, and it is Third Pillar Thursday. We are almost done, almost done, talking about mechanics in game and out of game. Just a general theme for the entire week. So, well, what's today's subject? All right, Third Pillar Thursday refers to the third pillar of gaming, exploration. So the first two pillars are combat and social interaction. The third pillar has to do with the environment and exploration and that kind of thing. And so, of course, I appointed myself the atypical third pillarist. So thank you for joining me. All right, guys, let's get right into it. Sorry. Hey, Vince, what's going on? Oh, the little preamble. Please tell me that the sound is coming through, because I'm receiving sound. So just give me a thing. Sound. Vince says still don't get this week's theme. Do you talk about mechanical mechanics or game mechanics? And the answer is yes. because glad you're getting some sound. Yeah, most of this is driven by the chat and people involved in it. So, yep, the answer is yes. We talk about what people want to talk about. So that's perfectly fine with me. You pass around a slice of digital pizza, voices get muffled, and people start talking with their mouth full, and that's awesome. But anyway, just a slight preamble, let you guys know that Sundays, I don't know how long it's going to take, but Sunday, 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, probably about 2 hours a piece. I'm going to basically do a live page through review of the Invisible Sun RPG PDF. So if you want to catch up on it or join me, it's not necessary to be involved 6 days a week, but yeah, I'm going to do that. Vince says, I wish I could join you Sunday, but I got my first session of Blades in the Dark at this time. Sweet. I love Blades in the Dark. And there's a Mutants in the Dark version out there that's really cool. It's like an X-Men version. I say X-Men, it's of course they can't use the IP, but it's like an X-Men version of Blades in the Dark. It's really cool. Foolish Kiwi says the weekly themes are more like a seed for Socratic circle. Yeah, I was going to say sarcastic, which it's about the same thing. No, yes, it is very much a Socratic circle. It's like, hey, someone throws a topic at the middle of the table and we all just snatch onto it and start to gobble it down. So anyway, I was thinking that, and I've read a lot of the comments, especially like Joseph Keenan writes some really great comments. I read all of them. Ben from Gulf City, that kind of thing. Dead Man says no pizza emoji. What? Are you serious? That's a very common food item. Okay. We'll have to do something about that. Maybe we'll talk about it more, and they'll fix that one. All right. Though I was thinking, wait, oh, there it is, and it's even got the drippy pizza at the end with the grease and stuff. Yeah, there you go. Thanks, guys. No, so my initial thought was to come up with and to talk about mechanical obstacles and hazards you can put into the game, meaning like I don't know, having the classic like a clock tower and with gears moving around, or the foundry or the factory with the conveyor belts and the molten ore and swinging mechanical arms, that kind of thing. Vince says I once had a wizard which theme was mechano magic. So all spells he cast summoned some kind of mechanical invention and produced the effect like a flamethrower for a fireball. Yep, exactly. Foolish Kiwi changed the pizza emojis. Sorry, I meant digital pizza. Pardon my French. Yeah, very cool. That's awesome. Thanks, guys. That's awesome. I thought about doing like the yeah, I got squirreled. But thought about doing like what's another common one? Oh, the movie Terminator, where Sarah Connor, the very first movie, she runs into the shutdown factory and turns everything on, and the Terminator is confused by all the sound and the heat and the motion and the pistons and all that kind of stuff. Something even far more futuristic. You could have imagine your classic like auto place where they make automobiles and the factories and the mechanical arms that are moving around, something like that. Maybe even it's another mechanical thing. A mill, like a millstone area underneath a windmill or water mill, where you have the gears turning and that kind of thing. So I thought about talking about that, because when I talk about the environment, the first thing that comes to mind is like rain, snow, heat, landslides, mud, raging rivers, and things. But most of that stuff is natural. But you don't have to ignore the man-made things. Let's see. Vince says in my Dungeon World campaign had this theme too, and his place of power was ancient clock towers. He was able to do stupidly powerful stuff while inside. I love stuff like that. I don't know why I like clock towers. Something. I don't know. Maybe it's the height and the intricacies of it, and being inside of like what's essentially a giant watch, and watching your head from getting like chopped off by things moving around, or not getting your cloak pulled into, or shirt cuffs pulled into one of the gears. It's turning a little bit at a time or something. Or maybe it's just emblematic of a ticking. It's because it's a clock. It's like ticking down the time, which kind of feeds into the ticking time bomb thing. I don't know. Maybe. Yeah. Vince says he always needed giant keys or the mechanical parts to create his effects. I like that kind of idea. Using like using thematic things in games and reshaping them. I get that people want, like in I was going to do a page through of the new Artificer or Artificer for 5th edition, but I think it's a good idea, and it's cool, but I've always just reskinned what was already there. I don't, I'm not a big, I need more player stuff, but whatever. Foolish Kiwi says there, it says now I want pizza. Foolish Kiwi says there's a 3.5 book called Iron Kingdoms. I thought there was already a game system called Iron Kingdoms. But anyway, that includes an arcane mechanic class, turning the classic artificer into more of an inventor as a bodger, the classic scrappy redneck style. Yeah. There's a Rocket City down in Alabama, I think, is known for having the highest population of people with the highest IQ. And a lot of them are like redneck inventors and stuff. Very, very brilliant, but doing it with very simple tools and stuff. Something like that. Fuller Q says, hit it with a wrench to fix it mechanic. Yeah. Super Meat Bow, a giant slaughterhouse with giant saw blades all around. That's what Vince says. Yeah, that's a slaughterhouse. A place that's like grinding up meat and stuff like that. That's pretty nasty. The classic hanging over the grinding teeth that destroys like metal and cars, a recycling plant kind of thing. Jenny, what's going on? Scott Poe got one. Back of a bowling alley with the mechanical pin resetters. That's a cool one too. And I've always, I don't know, maybe it's just the nerd in me, but I've always wanted to figure out what a complex method of resetting pins for something that's a very simple game that someone out of there had to do. Fat Ninja, what's up? Thanks for the coffee. Let's see if I know I'm making a ton of noise. I brought muffins. All right, so why mechanical? Let's get down a little bit into the nitty gritty, right? Why mechanical environments. Like, why bother doing it? Well, first of all, um, everyone's not when you're running your game. Um, while I've always pushed the idea of using the environment, like using rain, fog, snow, cold weather, um, floods, raging rivers, and all. Like, while I've pushed all that, um, foliage, thick foliage, humidity, sandstorms, and all that kind of stuff. I've pushed a lot of that, and while it's cool, especially if you have your people outside and they're adventuring and things like that, after a certain time, it can get a little dry. And everything that we create, even the fantastical, can get a little dry. So why not go for something that's a little more thematic for whatever you're doing, whether it's high-tech fantasy in a zero-G habitat to modern day, having a fight in a warehouse or something, or a construction site, all the way to something medieval where there's like the millstone. Fat Ninja says muffins. Yes, yes, yes. Yeah. Vincent says back then I invented some spells for my mechanical wizard. I had a Shallow's Fantastic Sphere. Remember that one, which was a floating mechanical sphere that could transform into all kinds of objects and back again, which was basically like a giant cube excavator. I love that. I love the idea of that, and using that as a theme. Like, you could have this, little mechanical trinkets or things that change shape. I think sometimes, though, the fear of not fear, the difference between like a spellcaster and an inventor is that we, and this is kind of a strange thing, but we understand that a spellcaster summons up some kind of power in their mind or in their soul. They draw the energy out of the environment or what have you. They say some incantations, they move their hands around, there's some kind of glow, they blast something or shoot something or read someone's mind or whatever, right? And then it's over. Whereas an inventor kind of carries around with them things, or grabs things around their environment and starts to create them. And rules wise, that can get a little complicated, because can my inventor hand over, I don't know, a mechanical protection device to another player character, whereas my mage has to expend a spell to do it and it's over? Can I just keep creating these things? That's where some players really they would love to abuse the generosity of a game master. So what of course what I would say is you can describe anything the way you want to, right? Reskinning something, flavoring something is you never limit it by that. But of course, I would say that you have to use the rules, right? If you can in game say, hey, I create this device and hand it to one of my player characters, but when that person goes to use it, you've got to expend whatever the game says, a spell slot or endurance or whatever the energy is, that kind of thing. Vince says, I once had a boss fight inside the plane of Mechanus. It was placed on giant moving cogwheels on different heights. I love that kind of stuff. I've seen someone. I wish I could. I mean, I could Google the image of it, but someone used miniatures and did that. Created the moving cogs and had a miniatures display of the moving cogs with their players and stuff. I mean, it was pretty massive. It is really cool. There's got to be an image of it out there, but it's really sick. Foolish Hugh says mages were banned from riding on trains because they'd get them stuck. Oh, I missed a little part of that. Yeah, he says, also like the idea of how it worked in Arcanum. Magic is powerful but unpredictable in nature, causing complex mechanics that require precise repetition to fail, to the point that powerful mages were banned from riding on the trains because they'd get them stuck. That's a big trope too. I think Dresden Files uses a similar method of like magic and mages interfering with mechanical things. C.S. Friedman has a series called a trilogy called the Cold Fire series, and they had a similar thing. Humanity landed was a starfaring race, and they sent colonists out to a planet. They landed on a planet, and their subconscious became real, and their subconsciousness and their fears would affect mechanical things. So they lost their technology, and 1,000 years later, they were a medieval society. And the energy of this planet, it was called the Fae. They never called it magic, but essentially that's how it worked, right? If you couldn't create firearms because the firearms might explode because of the subconscious idea that there's a chance there might be a misfire, and then it would create a misfire. Uh, Scott Poe says Indiana Jones movies use great machine set pieces to ramp the tension. Prop plane wheeling around. God, I love that scene. A prop plane wheeling around, the rock crusher in the mine, the crushing walls trap, the runaway tank. That's exactly like, I mean, how cool. Okay, let's go with let's stick with the prop plane wheeling around, right? Indiana Jones fighting a big beefy guy, punching him in the chest and in the gut. What, a head or more taller than Indiana Jones? No effect, right? But as they're, of course, plane, the wing, what was it? The chocks on one of the wheels slipped or moved aside during their fight, so the plane started to move because the engines were going, and it was spinning around in a circle. So there was not only the danger of fighting someone that he couldn't basically effectively hurt, and this person could basically knock his clock, but there was also the idea of watching out. And of course, what does he do? He sets up the fact that the propeller is coming behind this big dude and doesn't see it, and it chops him up. And what a great set piece for player characters if they're like fighting someone or shooting people, and they're like pull their swords and they're jumping off of like catwalks or whatever, but there's something like wheeling around inside of this place, something dangerous. The classic spinning blades of a giant building's HVAC system, the spinning blades for the air conditioning and heating and ventilation systems of a space habitat, a giant building, the underground system or whatever, and people going through the tunnels, and then the blades are spinning. They have to like figure out a way to stop the blades. Maybe there's a hacker. Maybe there's a pole that they have to jut in between the fan blades. Of course, the hacking thing where someone has to stop the blades, but they can only stop it for a certain amount of time. There's the slipping between the blade fans by timing it perfectly. I mean, those kind of things are kind of sweet. Pocket GM talks about Arcanum of Steamworks and Magic Obscura. Not familiar with that, but it was a video game and a book too, I think, where technology and magic both interfere with each other. Tech misfires or magic warps if it's too close. And you could, if you wanted to add like techno magic or like a technocracy or technomancy into your world, you could separate the two so that they don't merge together, or you could make them merge together and just reskin them. Like, hey, instead of a magic missile and I have a magic staff as my focus, I could have pistols and I just shoot magic missiles and burning hands and acid arrows out of my pistols. Excuse me. I think it popped me over. There we go. Okay, now I get it. Yeah, Vince says my Mechano Magic Wizard had spells that summon these objects with shadow magic, which allowed them to transform into things much bigger or smaller by shifting parts of itself into the plane of shadow. So the sphere was actually not a 3D object, but a 4D object. It was quite fun explaining this stuff to the other characters, but only high-level wizards would understand. That's cool. And I always used I always thought draconic dragons could speak in like 4D languages that common human languages could not describe the fourth and fifth and sixth dimensions and how things like that work. But yeah, having having a small object that is able to unfold itself into something larger is kind of sweet. I always thought that's how the folding boat and the instant fortress magic items worked. Um, I think in fifth edition they actually show the unfolding of the magic boat, but I always thought it was something that folded in on itself. You just kept folding it down till it was like a small piece of paper, whatever. Ooh, what are you talking? Sorry, chat. Uh, Scott Poe watching a guy gargle his own face is pretty unsettling. You guys are talking about talking about Indiana Jones, but Indiana Jones, I think, is such an excellent movie because it's so to me it so encompasses like pulp action. Um, and this is something that Vince was talking about in terms of world building off of theme. Pulp action is something that like I really hold close to my heart. It's the idea of having a fist fight on the wing of a plane or the skin of a zeppelin, or having a fight in the upper structures of an unfinished building and at a construction site and that kind of thing, and having those things in and around the area to use them as ways to ramp up the tension. So for example, having a fight in a construction zone with maybe not just girders and lifts, but you could have like elevators, whether they're like modern day elevators that are like mechanical, hydraulic, or you could have moving arms where there are like, oh, come on. What's the like pivot arms where there's a cantilever where there's heavy items on a platform that people could fight on, but the platform itself moves from a cantilevered arm that swings. Vince says, why do you carry a barrel with you? This is my spell book armor. Although it would look silly if your mage armor looked like a big barrel with just holes in it to stick your arms and legs out of. Foolish Kiwi says, I like the arcane mechanic idea. Build what it is for all intents purposes just a tank, but the barrel is inscribed with various runes on the inside, allowing you to fire various enchanted warheads. Yeah, there was a comic book series that had a very I want to say Russian theme to it, where there was these battles and they had these cannons, and human beings that I believe had arcane ability were strapped into the base of the cannons, and when the cannons fired, their like naked bodies fired out these blasts of energy on the other side or something. I don't know the side. I want to say it was called Red Star, but I could be wrong. They even had like, anyway, I'm going down a deep rabbit or squirrel hole with that one. Vince says, on the wings of a double decker that fights a giant zeppelin controlled by an intelligent ape Nazis while wearing a jetpack. Now that right there is pulp action, right? What's the movie? It didn't get a lot of fan love, but I still love the movie. The Rocketeer. The Rocketeer wasn't a thing that existed in pulp action, but I love the idea that it was built around that pulp action era, like between the 20s and 60s. It's kind of the era. It's it is retrofuturism was a lot of that. It was just when we were thinking about going into space. So all that retrofuturism had like the brushed aluminum, chrome missiles, Flash Gordon, the Shadow, Doc Savage, like that kind of thing, man. Yeah, this is great. Your Pocket GM says, yeah, the folding boat was always a more magical than material object. I imagine it working like some origami that if you knew the correct few folds, it would defy physics and become a boat. That's how I always thought about it, right? That you pulled out the folding do you want to go out with me check mark yes or no that you passed in class, or the little folding footballs when you were a kid in class. But every time you unfolded the piece of paper, it would just get bigger and bigger until you folded it and unfolded it. Yeah. Vince says, I liked feather tokens, but sadly those were one-time use. I loved feather tokens too. I absolutely love one-shot items like ciphers, uh, and things that weren't necessarily potions or scrolls. One-time items, something that you carried with you or were attached to you, little pendants and stones and toys and things like that. Your Pocket GM says feather tokens too are a classic favorite for random items in your pocket, like an entire dining set wheelbarrow or a boat anchor. Yeah, and I love little random things. I remember using a feather token tree, I think, to scale a wall one time, and it just came out of nowhere. Even the DM was like, "Oh, I forgot you had that," and everyone's like, "Oh, that's kind of sweet." And it was like, "Yeah, I throw a feather token down and just climb the wall." And we're like, "Oh, that's cool," you know. Vince says a lot of these items had potential, but never really were practical for most groups. And I think those items were part of an era of Dungeons and Dragons where it was far less what abilities you gained at the next level. It was very much we gathered a number of tools and we had to figure out how to use those tools. So player characters weren't like, I'm going to be a sun soul monk when I get to 20th level. It was very much like, yeah, I'm going to be a fighter at 20th level, but my magic items kind of shaped what I was, like the flame tongue sword, the frost brand sword, and then that you became known as carrying those things. And so a lot of those randomized items, you'd have a person with like 2 feather tokens, a bag with of magic beans, a cloak of the bat, and like a frost brand sword. Like it was just this weird hodgepodge of stuff. And once you get to higher enough levels, you kind of like become a little more thematic with the items that you had rather than gaining more and more abilities. Your Pocket GM says, what's the theme at the moment? Settings with weird technology? Technically, no. The theme was mechanical. The theme technically is mechanical obstacles in your game, like third pillar stuff in the background, things, setting materials. But it's the chat. we tend to focus on weird things. Vince says my summon mechanosphere could turn into like an umbrella, a 10-foot ladder, one giant I don't know what tent, I guess, a cart, a mechanical horse, a crossbow, a spyglass. I love stuff like that. I love like the idea of trying to find the right tool for the right moment. And so yeah, I've always been a fan of those kind of things. Foolish Kiwi says there's also an anime called Yujo Senki, similar to the Russian themed thing you mentioned, DBJ, except it's alternate universe World War II with wizards designed to punish a single person who mocked God. Always something cool with anime. Always take those things. Scott Post says players will use consumables if they think they can get more. They sure will, which is where the idea of ciphers in the cipher system and Numenera came from. It's the here's some random things, use them up, and you're definitely going to get more. And that's almost a muscle you kind of have to train your players with. Like definitely session 0 and keep hitting them over the head. Like, please don't save these things, use them, drink the potions, throw the beans down, crush the powders or spill the powders, throw the toys, like keep using them. You're going to get more. Yeah. so Vince says anime has great ideas oftentimes, but often the execution is rarely worth it. Yeah, but you know what? You throw enough wet toilet paper at a wall, it'll eventually stick, right? But anyway, okay. The original theme of this was mechanical backgrounds and obstacles and things. And the reason why Foolish Kiwi says, much like TV in America, absolutely. As much as we talk about some cool things on regular TV or Netflix or Hulu and all these streaming services, most of it is pretty much crap, right? You're just like, Netflix, like one out of maybe 15, 20 new shows on Netflix is actually worth it. It's crazy. But the reason why I bring up mechanical things for obstacles is because, again, having a typical fight on a flat plane where the things around you don't matter, limits you and the players in their options. So, for example, in most role-playing games, right, we talk about like, oh, the player's going to kill my bad guys, or the players are like, oh, the bad guys are too tough. But if there are options, if there are other entities, things working in the background, so that doing hit point damage is just one option to get out of a situation, then I think you'll have you can come up with some really fun encounters, right? So I mentioned previous this week, the one person dishing out the most damage in the group might be able to kill the creature in 3 hits, right? And no one else can, everyone else is going to have to hit it 10 times or more. You got the one player who's like, well, I dish out like 100 points of damage at a time. If I hit him 3 times, he's dead. But if another player says, well, if I push him into the grinding maul that's the recycling plant, or stick the evil wizard's head under the grinding mill, I could kill him in 1 round, right? It's hey, I can use the background to my advantage, or the background, the mechanical bits and pieces moving in the background can shift and make the world far more dynamic. For example, imagine, if you will, a factory with conveyor belts and gears and moving arms. It could be each round you could make up like a random list or something where you and someone else is fighting on a conveyor belt, and that conveyor belt could be moving you towards the furnace, right? It's the punch each other, grapple, and every round you're moving 30 feet closer to the killing furnace. And one of you, if you stay on the conveyor belt, you're just going to fall into the furnace or the forge or whatever the hell it may be. So doing a shove maneuver might benefit you more than I'm going to stab this guy in the back 5 times, right? Foolish Kiwi says, providing multiple escapes, a chance of diplomacy, or sneaking around all seem better options than open combat. If, for example, you give the party a super delicate artifact or a sick child to escort, those are things too. The protect the MacGuffin. If the MacGuffin gets snatched away, is a great trope as well. Whether it's the sick child that, I don't know, gets snatched up by the mechanical arm or is hiding, it goes to hide behind cover, and then that cover is lifted up by being loaded onto a sailing ship or something. And they're like 80 feet in the air as the big lifting arm goes to lift them up off the dock and goes to load them into the ship. And the PCs are like, wait a minute, whoa, we got to go get the prince back or whatever, and that kind of thing. Or like you said, the super delicate artifact that you don't want to break, but one of the PCs is holding it, and they're like tossing it back and forth with each other because you don't want to shatter this thing, or the Efreet might escape the bottle or what have you. That's those kind of tension generators, I think, are great without doing it to quote unquote punish the players, but instead create another avenue of things that are going on. So you could do someone could say, hey, I'm going to shoot my arrow to, break the strands that are holding, 5 tons of supplies that are being loaded onto the ship, and have it fall onto the enemy. Or I'm the thief, and or the rogue, and I'm going to take cover, or use my acrobatics to jump up on top of and use the mechanical arm as a great place to snipe people from. You know what I mean? But then maybe one of the enemies tries to follow them up there, and maybe they get the shine too, right? You get the monk that's up on the mechanical arm, punching and kicking people off of this mechanical arm as they fall to their deaths, or whatever, right? Or fall into the water, and then they got to swim their way back onto the ship or onto the docks or something. And that's just off the top of my head, right? It's just those are really cool things. Your Pocket GM says, my current group are playing Skull and Shackles, a pirate-themed campaign, and ship battles are literally two cut out battle maps that move, swivel, dive, ram, fly, etc. It's very dynamic. I love that stuff. And how cool is it to have, like, I mean, that is a theme, like pirate themed campaigns. How many times have we seen the boarding of the other ship and you're swinging across the ropes, the rapier fights, or scimitar or cutlass fights as people are climbing up the knotted ropes as they get to the crow's nest, the fights of people fighting on the different levels of the decks and being knocked over one side to another, or falling down the ladders down into the deeper bowels of the ships, walking the plank, kicking somebody over to fall into the water, and they've got to swim and climb their way back up. Cutting a rope so that the rope grabs someone's ankle and yanks them into the air, or pulls them over the edge of the ship by being pulled by the anchor or something. All those things. Drowning. Hell. And don't forget the random cannon shots and being in the way when the cannons fire, and being in the path of one of those things happening. You know what I mean? It says using environment is oftentimes the best method. My wizard once had to fight a Baylor and protect his group. He used dimensional anchor on it, a force wall to protect his group, and then summoned the giant earth elemental to collapse the cave we were in before teleporting out. See, I love stuff like that. And what I know it drives new GMs crazy when people try to come up with these out of the box ideas, but embracing it, I think, is the best thing. If me as a GM or a DM, that when a player comes up with a great idea, it gives me the goosies, right? It's just like, oh, that's a sweet idea. I didn't think about that. So I'm into it. And like I always say, there's no limit on your bad guys, right? So what, they one-shot your big bad. All right, well, apparently that one shot at big bad really wasn't the big bad. There's probably a bigger bad behind them. And why not give them the one shot, right? Let them be badasses, you know? I never understand that. It's like, oh, he ruined it. Well, my feeling is, don't prep so hard, right? Don't be so invested in what you think the outcome is going to be that your feelings are going to be hurt when it gets destroyed. Because really, the whole point of creating encounters is for your players to destroy them. If I create an illithid lair and my players are going to go down into the mind flayer layers, the actual goal is for the players to kill them, right? Your big bad is supposed to be killed by your players. Sure, it's great if it takes 15 rounds to have to, like a movie, but you can't really always modulate those things. So Scott Post said, I had a Gamma World encounter, Goblin Carousel. They were in the center in a control room while robotic arms and power tools were fixed along the platform. PCs had to climb and dodge to get past. I love that stuff. And you know what? You can really, honestly, you can reskin the hell out of a lot of things and just say that it's mechanical. So, for example, let's say you want to have a really dangerous, almost brutal, like, let's go towards Vince's Mechanus, plane of Mechanus, right? There's a whole plane where the entire plane are like giant cogs and foundries, fortresses with flames shooting out and gears moving and grinding and stuff like that. Here's what you do. Take yourself a dragon turtle. Take yourself a dragon itself. Reskin it and say, like, every round, instead of a tail, it's a pressure plate that comes down to like shape metal. It's like a big thing that bangs down or whatever. Let's say instead of claws, they're whirring blades that cut wood or cut into stone. The breath weapon is steam or flame or acid shooting out to do something. And then every round have some randomizer. Hey, everybody, roll a d20. whoever gets the lowest roll is going to be a target, right? Or hey, everybody, like what we'll use, we use critical hit uses a thing called even the odds. So you want to even the odds against you. Roll any die. If you get an even result, you're not a target. If you get an odd result, you're going to have to make saves to dodge out of the way, right? And do that every round. You know, just reskin it. And then, hey, if somebody wants to damage the mechanisms, you've got armor class and hit points sitting right there. And just shape it differently. And if someone comes up with a great idea, like I'm going to stick a pole into the thing to stop it, let them do it. Make it a strength versus strength check. Make it dodging or skill checks or something like that. Have them create situations where standing still in the middle of a battlefield and just shooting things isn't the smart idea, you know, that kind of things. Scott Poe says, kill your darlings principle. Hell yeah. Scott Poe saying, well, first, so it's cool. Foolish Kiwi says, always be ready to change your plans. Your party may end up eating the crow that was going to turn into your quest NPC. Yeah. And Scott Poe says, kill your darlings principle. If for nothing else, one of the great tools for being a creator itself is the idea that nothing is sacred. One of the greatest things I've heard, because I'm a movie fan. I love the creation of movies. And most movies, despite the people who write them and film them and act in them, most of them are created in the editing room. And one director once said, I filmed one of the greatest scenes that I felt I ever filmed, and said, I cut it out of my movie because it didn't fit with the entire theme of the movie. Sometimes we have great ideas. Kill it. Destroy it. If you can't kill your darlings, then the creative process itself, you've put a barrier in front of your creative process. And oftentimes I do a lot of writing when I'm not live streaming. I'm writing, and with myself, Alex, Rob at Critical Hit, sometimes I'll say, hey, I got this great idea, and those two will be like, yeah, but it doesn't fit. And I'll go, all right, kill it. And it doesn't mean kill it, destroy it, and get rid of it. It means it doesn't belong here now, so use it somewhere else. If you created a great encounter and your players just fly right over top of it, use it some other place. If they kill your big bad and you're like, oh man, use it a different way. Sometimes action economy has a funky mechanical element to it that can really. It's one enemy fighting 5 people means it's basically a multiple of 5 versus 1. So you could reskin inanimate things around your big bad and just make more creatures, right? Let's say your big bad's a big vampire or a wizard, and they're a elementalist. So you could describe your elementalist as summoning like earth, air, fire, and water spells, but just make them earth elementals and fire elementals and stuff around the room. You know, there's a tornado in one corner and a pillar of flame in another corner, and a pillar of earth, and then all of a sudden they start flowing around the room. So instead of describing them as a creature, they could be elemental effects that happen around the room, and basically just make them creatures. And hey, if you stay to this side of the room, you're going to get burned. If you go in this side of the room, you're going to get hit by the air. And if you go in this side of the room, the earth is going to like swallow you up or fall from the ceiling. Those kind of things. Yeah, just reskin that stuff. Traps are the same way. Reskin them, make them natural environments, make them 5th edition has pit traps, collapsing ceiling trap. Wow. The poison arrow trap and all those things. You can reskin them into what I'm talking about, mechanical things, factories, construction sites. Instead of a collapsing ceiling, it is things being lifted up on a mechanical arm, and the iron girders fall down on the player characters because they knock something over. Instead of the flaming statue trap, it is a blowtorch, and the canister goes off and it lights on fire and flame shoots out. All that kind of stuff. I mean, you can reskin spells. All those. I get that we love the new and shiny, but there's so many things that are already available, and if you just change the words without changing how they're used, you can really surprise and make something dynamic for your game. Foolish Huey also never use one enemy versus 5 people unless they have illusions or can teleport or something else. No one likes standing in a circle around someone biting at their ankles for half an hour. Exactly. Set up situations where I once had a dragon that was in a large cave, and the dragon would just like fly up on these giant ledges that were like 60-80 feet high and would throw boulders at people, and the dragon had like healing potions that were hidden away, and the dragon had all the there were like dragon shaped statues, and he used illusions to make the illusion look like it was really him and stuff. Players were pissed off, but I was like, this is an ancient dragon. They've been assaulted before. You're just going to have to rethink your way out of it. So yes, illusions, teleport, shape changing, shrinking, passing through walls, traps set up to assault the players, Legend of Zelda type things where you have to figure your way through it, moving stones and bricks in and out of places to get somewhere or to prevent something from happening. You know, I once used a magical plane that was made up of nothing but like 30-foot stone bricks that moved in geometrically. So they would lift up in the air or fall down or slide like a giant, I don't want to say Rubik's Cube, but more like, I guess that's the closest thing, or a child's toy where you put the cubes into the spaces. So as the players were walking across this magical plane, they didn't know whether the stone they were walking on would lift up in the air, or a stone would fly over their head and come crashing down, or another stone would slide from the left or behind them or to the right, or 2 stones would slide together and crush them. So they didn't have to stand still. They had to figure out, okay, next round, this is probably going to move here. So I need to move out the way. So yeah, absolutely play with those things. Play with height, play with, catwalks, play with things hanging from ceilings or coming from below, play with different environments. The sailing ships and waters. Someone could be hiding under a dock or swimming underneath an enemy to come up on the other side. An enemy, a creature's tentacle could come up from underneath docks, and the tentacles can come overhead, and they're being assaulted from both sides, but they can't reach the main body of the tentacled creature unless they get underneath the dock or jump into the water. Maybe the tentacled creature can be burned by shooting it the tentacles, but you can't hit the main body or the main body of the Hydra because it's underwater. Like those are really cool, strange things you can do to modify the environment. But also floating back to the mechanical idea of the environment, let's think about the clock tower, because I mentioned this before. What a great way to count down to something happening, right? So you could say, every other round, this gear is going to swing by, and you have to make, if you don't use a disengage action or a dodge action, you'll get hit by the arm. Or every round every other round, if you're in the left side of this room, flames will shoot out, and you have to make a save for, half damage or whatever. And you can this is where you can threaten PC's resources. Hit points are resources, or whatever game you're playing. Hit points, stress, damage reduction. These things are resources, but there are other resources in the games. One resource is actions. If a player has actions, movement, attack, bonus actions, those things are resources. If they have to spend one of those resources to dodge away from something lethal, or being captured or restrained or blinded or knocked down or moved away from something as the floor moves, or maybe a wind gust or something moves them, a raging river moves them downstream, then maybe they have to split or change or rethink about their actions next round, right? So there are other resources that they have to expend as well. exhaustion, mental faculties, you expending a resource so that they don't lose magic potential, like a spell slot or something of that nature, right? It's threatening players from different angles will mean that you don't have the one player or one player type that can min-max their way through an encounter, right? So if the only method of success is doing damage, then the only people that will succeed are the ones who do the most damage. But if you have other methods of success, for example, one player thinks, "Hey, I can beat the enemy with my stick," and the other player says, "Well, why don't we lure them into the cage and then drop the cage shut?" Which one is more effective, right? And I'm not saying that you should then now go, "Oh, well, I guess people that do damage aren't effective." Maybe they are effective in drawing the enemy in one direction so that the PCs can do something else in the other direction, right? Having alternate, not just win, but alternate methods of success. So the success might not be killing the creature. The success might be getting across the room, or getting the delicate artifact, or saving the small child, or retrieving the lost documents and getting the hell out of there. So having alternate win potential, I think, is what I'm trying to say. Foolish Kiwi says I know splitting the party is a sin, but I once had a 4-player dungeon with a few split rooms that only allowed 2 people in each. Yep. The levers and keys only affected things on the other side. Ooh. Oh, you really play with that. Each entrance had a hint on the front for which characters might shine better in said section. For example, for those sharp of blade, but it was technically possible with any combination. One room usually required more physical action, the other a more puzzle-based or skill-based thing, but usually both had a little of each. I love that. I love that idea, where the idea that the strong or fast or a brilliant character gets to shine to solve the puzzle, whatever that puzzle might be, right? It's the we can't break the door down. We need the intelligent hacker to hack the door codes, right? But then we've seen this trope used before. The hacker needs to be the one to do the code so they shine. But then on the other hand, someone pulls out a gun and shoots the pressure plate beside the door, and all of a sudden the door closes or opens or locks or something, right? Foolish Kiwi goes on to say, one room usually required more physical. Says, it really let me tailor challenges to let every single character shine. And pointing above, I absolutely agree with that. All of that above, yes. The simple act of letting people shine, spreading the spotlight, just because I know players want to shine in each and every action, but sometimes that's not possible, right? So the thing is spreading that around. Yes, my player can dish out a lot of damage, but if the enemy is floating in the air or too far away, maybe I need to rely on the mage to put me on a floating disc to get me to allow my character to shine by the mage having them shine to let me shine, right? It's the person who complains that fog is blocking my vision. Now my archer sucks, and you're nerfing my archer. But then maybe that lets the wizard shine by using a gust of wind to blow the fog away. You know what I mean? It's spreading, moving the spotlight around. It's all the beefy characters can stand up front and take the brunt of all the attacks, while the sneaky character gets to sneak around the edge and get the retrieve the MacGuffin, the gem, the secret missives, the map, the small child, and get out, because that's really what you need to do, because it's not fighting everything and killing it. There's this weird role-playing mantra that you're don't get in the way of me killing my experience points, right? Don't talk to my experience points. But here's the deal. let's think of the word experience, right? Experience points come through experience. Talking your way out of being cooked on a spit with trolls and convincing them to stay awake when the sun comes up and they turn to stone is experience. You defeated them. You didn't cut them. You didn't shoot them. You didn't knock them down. You distracted them long enough to convince them to stay awake before they turn to stone. Even though we know trolls, I know trolls don't turn to stone, but you get my point, right? It's experience is, to me, failing in an encounter by running away because the challenge was too tough, but you learned something from it, is experience. I give out it. That's why we have milestone experience point giveaways. Your character experienced things. You experienced ups. You experienced downs. You got to experience what it was to use your abilities in a new and unique way. Oh, great. You hit a milestone. Here's some experience points, right? You experience the world. So also, there's a trope of the GM is a player as well. And the GM is a player. I'm a player in the game. If I'm running a game, and what I love is to be surprised by things. As a player, you want to be surprised by uncovering new and unique things in your world. For me, because I created the world, how do I get surprised? Well, I get to role play all the NPCs. I get to role play the creatures, even if they're mindless or beasts or mechanical. I get to make my world as dynamic as I want it to be instead of making it a green screen. And then I get to be surprised by what the players do. And then, like a movie, I'm like, oh, that's a sweet scene. I gotta, when the barbarian is just like, I'm going to go over and instead, I'm going to push against the statue and knock the statue against the giant when he comes through the door. And I'm just like, I didn't really think about that. Yeah. I like that idea. Okay, it's going to be the statue's real heavy. It's DC 20. I don't care. I'm just going to use my rage and just push this thing over. I'm going to put my back against the wall and put my feet against the pillar and rock it back and forth. And when he comes through the door, the halfling rogue is going to stand in front of him and distract him, and I'm going to hit him in the back of the head, so it knocks him, the frost giant, in the head or something. And I'm like, wow, that's a cool idea. That's sweet. You know what I mean? So Foolish Kiwi says, always reward relative experience for diffused combat unless it's literally just saying I'm not going there because X is there. Well, yeah, that's true. If you can talk a nation's leader out of going to war, you essentially survived the war, or at least came out on top. Right. You had an experience and you used a unique method. Sure. What is it, temporary? Sure. Maybe you talked your way out of it temporarily. Yeah, maybe you snuck your way around temporarily, and maybe the enemy may come on your trail later on. Sure. But why wouldn't you reward intelligent things? The whole point of the role playing is to create conflict and obstacles. It's not punishment. It's not just punishment and reward. It is making things more complicated. Hey, you convinced this nation's leader not to go to war. Great. Okay, but then there are factions that are like, I can't believe those PCs convinced them not to go to war. We're going to lose money in the black market from our trade, right? That's a trope too. Two enemy nations want to go to war, but really underneath it all, the two nations that hate each other have a black market because they want war to happen because they make too much money. So they're agreeing to work with each other in black market trade. So they want to have war, so they fight each other, right? When the PCs stop that, the black marketeers are like, and that's where you keep creating new stories. You're not going to run out of creatures. You're not going to run out of encounters or run out of stories. 5 players against me means that's 5 more story ideas that I get to plumb, right? My idea is probably going to suck when I'm up against 5 other people, just like people in the chat. I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but if I steal those ideas from somebody else and a player starts thinking, they start talking at the table, like, I bet, you know what? I bet so-and-so, the Rakshasa, was probably working with the Pit Fiend, and they were working together with the succubus to make the hags turn all those creatures and attack the village. I bet that's what happened. As a GM, you're just like, Yeah, and you're writing it down like, shit, I didn't think about that. I didn't even think about putting that together. You take your notes, you write it down, and you guess what? You're absolutely right. Um, your pocket GM says the joy of being a GM is seeing how the players overcome absurd circumstances and strange situations. That's why proactive players, creative players, and cooperative players are the best, with a big thumbs up. I cannot agree with you more. And coming up with the I think the environment is underutilized, and I think it's just another tool you can stick in your back pocket. Use it, abuse it, let the players, if they go to the clock tower and they want to burn the darn clock tower down, let them do it. If they go into the foundry and they want to spill molten, iron ore all over the floor, let them do it. If they want to, put the ogre's face into the into the metal press and have it come down and slam on the ogre's head, let them do it. Let them have fun with it. There's always more ogres. There's always more foundries. There's always more. So anyway, guys, we've hit the hour mark. I know, again, we like to go off on tangents and things, which is not a big deal. I will be seeing you guys tomorrow for Future Friday. Guys, thank you very much. Everyone have a great day. Thank you for joining me. I will see thee tomorrow. And Foolish Kiwi says, don't forget to smash that vertically aligned thumb button, preferably the one aimed towards the heavens. I like that. I need a t-shirt for that. All right, guys, have a good one. See ya. Bye.